The moment you open your eyes, your brain makes a decision before you do. Within 90 seconds, most people have already handed the day to yesterday's version of themselves. But if you know what's happening in that window, you can step into the day as someone who chose to be there, not someone who just woke up inside their old life again. In this video, I'll show you number one, why your brain defaults to autopilot the second you wake up and what that cost you over months and years. Number two, what psychologists call the fresh start effect, why it works, and why most people only use it once a year instead of every single morning. Number three, a three-step morning reset practice drawn from Vedic psychology that activates the fresh start mindset every day, not just on January 1st. Let's get into it. A man named Arjun, a software engineer in his late 30s, told me something that stopped me cold. He said, I've had the same bad morning for 4 years. Not four bad mornings. The same one repeated. He'd wake up, reach for his phone, scroll through anxiety inducing news, replay the argument he had with his manager, feel the weight of everything undone, and drag himself into a day that felt like a continuation of punishment rather than a beginning. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't broken. He just didn't know what was happening inside his own mind during those first 90 seconds. Once he did, everything changed. There's a reason Arjun kept having the same morning. It wasn't weakness of character, it was neuroscience. When you wake up, your brain doesn't start fresh, it picks up where it left off. Neuroscientists call this pattern completion. Your brain, designed for efficiency and survival, immediately scans for context. Where am I? What's the threat level? What do I need to do? And it answers those questions by reaching into the filing cabinet of yesterday, last week, last year. Within seconds, you are not a new person in a new moment. You are a continuation of the story your brain has been telling about you. The Vedic texts have a word for this mechanism, samskara. It translates roughly as impression or groove, but the more accurate image is a riverbed. Water flows where the land has already been carved. Your habits, your fears, your automatic reactions, they are the riverbed. And every morning before you've said a single word or made a single choice, the water of your awareness is already flowing down the same channels. The Bhagavad Gita describes this directly. It says the mind can be the greatest friend or the greatest enemy of the self, depending on whether you are its master or its servant. Most people, the moment they wake up, immediately become servants. The mind says, here is what you are worried about, and they follow. It says, here is your identity, and they accept it without question. This isn't a moral failing, it's the default setting. The brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, conserve energy by running on pattern. The question is whether you ever consciously override the default. And here's what makes this genuinely serious. Every morning you don't override it, the groove gets deeper. Neuroscience confirms what the Vedic teachers observed thousands of years ago. Repeated patterns become structural. The neural pathways that fire together wire together. So the man who spends his first 90 seconds in anxiety is not just having a bad morning. He is, over time, physically reinforcing an anxious brain. The good news is that this works in both directions. The same mechanism that locks you into yesterday can be used to build something new. But first, you have to see the window. The window is those first 90 seconds, before the pattern fully activates, before the mental filing cabinet swings open. There is a brief moment of what psychologists call hypnopompic awareness, the transitional state between sleep and full waking consciousness, where the brain is unusually plastic, unusually open. The Vedic tradition calls this the Brahma Muhurta, the hour of Brahma, and considers it the most spiritually potent time of the day. Not because of mysticism, but because the mind is genuinely more receptive in that state. The grooves haven't fully activated yet. You have a choice, but only if you act before the autopilot takes over. In 2014, a team of researchers at the Wharton School published a study that changed how behavioral scientists think about motivation. They analyzed millions of data points from gym attendance, goal-setting behavior, and personal diary entries. What they found was this. People are dramatically more likely to pursue goals right after what the researchers called temporal landmarks. New Year's Day, birthdays, the first day of a new week, the first of the month. They called it the fresh start effect. And it's real, it's measurable, and it's powerful. The psychological mechanism behind it is that these landmarks create a mental separation between your past self and your present self. You stop identifying with the person who failed, the person who procrastinated, the person who couldn't stick to the plan. You feel like a new chapter has opened, and in that feeling, you act differently. But here's the problem: most people use this effect roughly 4 times a year. New Year's, maybe a birthday, a Monday after a rough week, a fresh month. They're leaving almost 361 fresh starts on the table every single year. The Vedic teaching goes further than the Wharton study. It says the fresh start isn't tied to the calendar at all, it's tied to consciousness. Every moment of genuine awareness is a fresh start. The Sanskrit concept here is pratiprasava, which means returning to the origin. It's the idea that your original nature, before the conditioning, before the grooves, is always available. The past only has power over you when you're unconscious of it. The moment you become conscious, you are no longer fully determined by it. This is not wishful thinking. It maps almost perfectly onto what neuroscientists describe as metacognition, the ability to observe your own thinking rather than being inside it. When you step into the observer position, even briefly, you interrupt the automatic pattern. You create a gap, and in that gap, you can choose. The fresh start effect in the Vedic framework is not a feeling that arrives on special occasions. It's a capacity that exists every morning, every hour, every moment you choose to wake up inside your own life rather than sleepwalk through it. But here's what the research also shows: the fresh start effect fades fast if it isn't anchored to a practice. People who feel motivated on January 1st and do nothing to structure that motivation see it collapse within 2 to 3 weeks. The feeling of a new beginning is not enough. You need a mechanism that makes the fresh start real, something you do in those 90 seconds that physically signals to your brain. Today is not a continuation of yesterday. That mechanism is what the third section is about. But before we get there, understand what you're actually building toward. A person who activates the fresh start mindset every single morning, not once a year, but 365 times a year, is compounding at a completely different rate than someone who waits for a landmark. Over 5 years, that's the difference between 20 fresh starts and 1,025. The math of consistency is brutal and beautiful at the same time. I want to describe something before I name it, because the name makes people skip the thing. Imagine waking up and before you touch your phone or speak to anyone, spending about 4 minutes doing three specific things. In those 4 minutes, your nervous system shifts from threat detection mode to possibility mode. Your brain stops completing yesterday's patterns and starts writing a new one. You feel, not metaphorically, but neurologically, like the day belongs to you rather than to your history. That's what this practice does. The Vedic tradition calls it sankalpa, which means conscious intention. But the mechanism is modern and measurable. Step 1: the pause. The moment you wake up, before any thought gets traction, take 3 slow, deliberate breaths, not a breathing exercise, just 3 breaths that you actually choose. This does something specific. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response, and briefly interrupts the stress cascade that normally fires within seconds of waking. Research on the physiological sigh, 2 inhales through the nose followed by a long exhale, shows it reduces cortisol faster than almost any other voluntary action. 3 of those, and you have bought yourself a moment of actual choice. Step 2: the reframe. With that moment of choice, ask yourself one question. Not what do I need to do today? Not what am I worried about? Ask who do I want to be today? This is the Sankalpa. The Vedic texts are insistent on this. Identity precedes action. You do not build a life by doing the right things. You build it by becoming the kind of person who does them. The question, who do I want to be today, is not motivational fluff. It's a neurological interrupt. It forces the brain to construct a forward-facing identity rather than retrieve a backward-facing one. Researchers at New York University studying self-affirmation found that a single identity-based statement in the morning measurably reduces defensive behavior and increases openness to new information throughout the day. The Vedic teachers didn't have fMRI machines, but they knew the same thing: set the identity before the day sets it for you. Step 3: the anchor. This is the one most people skip, and it's the one that makes the other two stick. Before you stand up, name one specific thing you will do today that reflects the identity you just chose. Not a to-do list, one thing. If you said, I want to be someone who is present with my family, The anchor might be, I will put my phone in the other room during dinner. If you said, I want to be someone who is building something, the anchor might be, I will write for 20 minutes before I check email. The anchor converts the feeling of a fresh start into a behavioral commitment. And behavioral commitments, even small ones, activate what psychologists call identity behavior feedback loops. You do the thing, you feel like the person who does that thing, and tomorrow morning it's slightly easier to choose that identity again. This is how the groove changes, not through willpower, through small, consistent acts of choosing. 4 minutes, three breaths, one identity question, one anchor. The fresh start mindset every day is not a philosophy, it's a practice. And a practice, unlike a feeling, compounds. Arjun, the engineer from the beginning of this video, started doing exactly this. Not a dramatic overhaul, not a 5 a.m. cold plunge routine, just 4 minutes before he picked up his phone. He told me 6 weeks later, I still have hard days, but they feel like days I'm moving through, not days I'm trapped inside. That single morning, the one where you actually try it, is data. It tells you something about where you are and what's possible. But a lot of people try the practice, feel something shift, and then hit a wall a few days later. Old patterns pull hard. Life gets busy, the groove is deep. If you've tried building a morning practice on your own and it keeps collapsing, or if you know something in your thinking needs to change but you can't quite see what it is, that's exactly the conversation I'd like to have with you. There's a free 15 to 30-minute call, link is in the description, where we talk through specifically where you're stuck. No pitch, no agenda. You walk away with a clear next step for your situation, whether we ever work together or not. If you're serious about turning this from a good idea into an actual shift in your daily life, book the call at dailymindreset.com/consultation. Subscribe if you want more of this. We go deep on these ideas every week. What does your first 90 seconds look like right now, honestly? And what's the one thing you'd change about it?